Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Yuly. I'm a computer engineer in the US. And on this channel, I share how technology and optimization can make your businesses smarter and your lives easier. And since I'm a Turo host myself, one of my content buckets is focused on helping Turo hosts optimize their car rental business. I'm super excited. And sorry about that. This is, as I'm sure you know, my first time back in a long time. So please excuse any hiccups. So I'm super excited to start doing these live streams again. And I plan to do both tech and Turo live streams weekly. So make sure to check those out, both out. In today's live stream, we dive deep into strategies, updates, and more. And But as you know, with an emphasis on data, technology, efficiency, and much more. And it's going to be an awesome one today because the guest that is joining us is a Turo host who, like me, is incredibly data driven and analytical. And so I'm certain that you'll find his insights to be super valuable. So let me introduce Brian.
Hey,
So Brian has spent most of his career in consumer electronics industry. He's an automobile enthusiast and has a passion for numbers and data, all of which has been incredibly valuable in starting and scaling his Turo business, as you can imagine. He's also a very happy husband and proud dad. And fun fact, he loves rock music. So Brian and I connected earlier this year when he saw me mention my app in one of the live streams, and he reached out. And so we've been brainstorming and exchanging ideas about the app and our Turo business ever since. And so I'm super thrilled that he's here today and will possibly be on future weekly live streams as well. Fingers crossed. And so, hey, Brian, thanks so much for agreeing to do this. And
hey,
hopefully, you really do come back weekly.
I will try. I will try. Uh, I'd say
So,
life's quite busy, so it might be tough. I'll do what I can.
well, we love talking strategy. We've been doing that tons. So I'm pretty sure that once we just get comfortable with doing it here with everyone else, he's going to love it. So, before we get started, I just wanted to provide a quick outline of what we're going to be covering. So, first, we're going to go through Brian's Turo background, his journey. Then we're going to get into some important tips and strategies that he has for us. And then finally, we'll discuss some Turo changes and updates that some of you may or may not be aware of, but are really important. And we may take some of your questions along the way if they're relevant at the moment. If not, we'll cover them at the end. And so please just make sure to enter your questions in the chat. And they don't have to be super chats, but if you're appreciating the value and you want to support the channel, then of course they're very appreciated. So let's get started. So Brian, let's start with your turtle journey. Let's start with the history from the beginning. How and when did you first get into Turo?
How did well? I was a I was a Turo user, right? So a few years back, pre-pandemic, I'm from New York, by the way, and I was transplanted here in Seattle for work. And earlier on, pre-pandemic, I used to fly to California every week. Pretty much every Monday, I would fly to California and leave every Thursday or Friday. And I would rent like a typical, like Hertz type automobile or enterprise car for the week. And then sometimes my wife would fly in and we would go to like Napa for the weekend. So I discovered Turo that way because rather than taking the Ford Fusion that I rented for the week to Napa, I would give back that Ford Fusion and pick up like a Porsche 911 or something more exotic, a Range Rover or something that was more fun to drive and drive up to Napa and spend the weekend there, return the car on Monday or Sunday night, and then work back in California for the rest of the week. So that's how I started with Turo. And then, fast forward, it's during the pandemic, and I had to go to my brother-in-law's wedding. I had to go to my brother-in-law's brother's wedding. And my brother-in-law and I both pulled up in 911s to the wedding in California,
Nice.
and we rented it from the same Turo host. And I remember it was in this like gated lot with like a remote door opening, and there were just Porsches all over the lot. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. So, you know, I worked for Amazon at the time, and fast forward in my brain, I'm just trying to think of how I can make this work, how I could do it. And I threw out a Tesla Model X. I threw that up on Turo, and this is during the pandemic. I got $350 a day for this car. For a 4-day rental, I cleared after the rental $1,000 pretty much after 4 days at $350 a day. So I was like, but the entire process was tremendously inconvenient. I had no desire to do it anymore. I stopped and took it off. And I then tried to figure out how I could make this like doable. Like, how can I make this work? So fast forward now to 2023, about a year and a half ago now, exactly a year and a half ago, March of 2023, I had a Lexus GX at this point in time, and it just sat here in the driveway. I literally bought it to tow a camper, and I never used it. I threw that up on Turo, and we were fortunate enough to have an employee that has worked for us for the past 10 years for my wife and I. She was initially the nanny of my son, but like he's now in high school, and she barely does anything for him. She did everything else, but like she's busy. Not that she didn't do anything, but she wasn't taking care of my son at that point anymore. And I had thought, saying, if I want to start a Turo business, he's getting older. We're not going to need your services anymore. But like, if I start this business, will you work for me to start? So I immediately had help. And with that, I started renting.
Let me just pause you there real quick, because I just want to point out how, which we're going to get into in the future later on, but I just want to point out how Turo is so unique to everybody. Like, everybody's story is different. Like, in your case, you have this scenario with that, this person who's been a wonderful asset in your life or other things. And now you've been able to, instead of saying, hey, I'm so, there's nothing else. Now she's helping you in another capacity. And so that's why, like, everybody's Turo story is so interesting and unique. This is a business where everybody's business kind of looks different. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to, just wanted to point that out.
Totally good and relevant. Like, and this woman's name is Celia, and she basically runs the show at my business right now, every day. Like, couldn't be possible without her. So I put this Lexus GX up, and I remember I put it up on March 4th for its first availability on March 5th. It was a Friday, March 4th, March 5th. I woke up in the morning to a book trip for that night at the airport at like 11 o'clock at night. And now I got in the car that morning with my son. We were driving to Emerald City Comic-Con. So it was the Comic-Con here. And we're in the Seattle Center, where there's zero cell service in the basement. And I come out of the Seattle Center with 6 book trips. And this is pre-automatic messages. This is like before, CarSync was still there, but it wasn't like actually working. So, I mean, I wasn't using it. Sorry, it wasn't working for me. So I had 6 book trips throughout the next like 3 months.
That's crazy.
By the end of that day, I probably had 10 book trips. And then by the end of the next day, or it's booked out, peppered out throughout the whole summer. And I'm like, we can't use this car anymore. I mean, it's really like almost not available. So and this was literally an extra car, so we didn't need it. I didn't care that much, and we were going to go camping less anyway. So after about 2 months of booking this thing and it getting booked up, I finally was convinced I'll buy another car. I bought an Expedition so I could have it to go camping, and I put it up on Turo as well. And I never used it to go camping other than once, the first weekend I got it, and then that was it. It was up on Turo. So the Lexus and the Expedition kind of started it all, and then.
And you got those within how close to each other?
Well, the Lexus I had for years, it was my own vehicles, but the Lexus, I started it in March. I blocked the car for all of April because we did take a cross-country camping trip. So April, it didn't rent at all. And then May, it started renting again. It was filled up in May, and I got the Expedition June 1st. So truly, like 2 months after, it's 3 months of time span, but 2 months of rentals, I said I need that Expedition. So the Expedition kept getting booked up, and I just kept saying, if I just multiply this over and over again, how could I lose? There's many ways to lose, by the way. But I'm sitting there running the numbers with my wife, kind of creating like back of the napkin business plans, then going into spreadsheets and kind of crunching the numbers, saying if I multiply this and I multiply that, what will I get? And I finally, basically said to my wife, I want to leave Amazon and just do this full time. So that was a hard, thing to swallow for me with the loss of income, like steady income, and for her to think that I might not actually be working and I might just be loafing around. Because when we had 2 cars, it wasn't that busy, right? So it wasn't that she didn't know what that was going to mean. But I had I had it was a 2-year-old Porsche 911 at the time. So it's basically a brand new Porsche 911. To show my wife that I was serious, I agreed to sell the car. So I sold that car. It was a sad day for me, but sold the car and started this Turo business. And November of 2023, I had left Amazon, but in October, I bought 3 additional cars. So coming into November, I had 5 cars, and then I bought 1 in November and then 2 more in December. So I had like 8 cars by the end of the year of 2023.
So it's safe to say you started off as a so you started off as a user, as a guest. You thought it was interesting. You said, "Hey, this is," and so then you tried it out with yours. It was like you said, just it was crazy. It was the bookings were incredible, and so you started adding a few cars here and there. So fast forward
Today.
to right now, what does the snapshot look like of your business? How many cars do you have? Where are you operating from?
Well, I have 2 physical locations that I operate out of. I have one in the South Seattle Renton area. I don't know if anyone knows Seattle area, but Renton is like where Boeing Field is located. It's just south of Lake Washington, just north of the airport. And then I have a private lot that I rent on a piece of private property about 2.5 miles from the airport in a town called Tukwila. It's 6 minutes. There's almost never traffic to get from that location to the airport. And in the summer, we hardly ever use the location at all because we don't need it. It's kind of overflow for us, and there's no cars in the summer. Like, we are very seasonal here. So I've got 25 cars. I had 28 cars a month and a half ago, but I have 25 cars now. 2 locations we operate out of. The one in South Seattle is a house that I rent. I could fit 9 cars in the driveway and about 5 cars out in the street in front, and I could park other places in the neighborhood if I had to. But again, we don't really. Today, I probably had like 12 cars there, which was like kind of maxed out. But
And so someone wants to know, Moni Maria wants to know, do you still have the Porsche? Or is that the one you sold? Did you buy one back? Or is that's the one you sold
I
to
bought.
show your
I,
wife you were serious?
yeah, no, I sold that Porsche. I sold it for what I paid for it. I had it for 2 years, under 5,000 miles on it. It was a 911, and I sold it. It's sad. I have 2 Macans now. So I would never put a 911 on Turo. Like, never. It's just not a good combination for anyone to put that on Turo. Like, you got to also. Well, we'll get into that part later, but you got to think of who's going to rent your cars, right? So, that's what I'll say about that. Yeah. So
Yes.
25. Good.
So 25 cars within a span of a year and a half, you would say? A year?
A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah,
Year
and
and a half.
we'll say October of 2023 is when I actually started this full time in growth. So in a year, 25 cars, right? In a year of actually planning to do this versus like hobbying it for the first 6 months.
That's
And kind
pretty
of like
wild.
checking out the numbers.
That's
Yeah.
like if you're gonna do it, just do it right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just
And
go out. You just went all out.
yep. And we have 3 people, 3 employees working for us. That's including Celia,
That's
the
amazing.
full-time person. Yeah. 1 full-time, 2 part-time, and me.
So maybe we'll go into some of the details, some of the if anybody's curious or if we have time to go into some of the details as to like how you acquired these cars or maybe we'll leave that for, a future stream.
Mhm.
But so right now as far as the future, what does that look like going forward? What are your goals for the Turo business? Are you looking to keep growing and add cars? Are you trying to streamline the operations? Are you trying to focus on profits or all of the above? What are your goals for the future?
I'm not focusing on profits at the moment. I am focused on my numbers. I know if I'm profitable or not. I'm not super concerned at this moment if I am or not. Like, I'm not into panic mode if I lost money for a month. Let's put it that way. And I know if I've lost money. That's one thing that's very easy to mistaken is your cash flow for your actual profit. And I'm pretty aware of when when I lose money and when I don't. But what I'll say is, I'm really trying to, so you can imagine this 1 year of growth. It's hard to really recognize where your baseline is. And what I mean by that is like what your steady state is, what your run rate is every month. Okay. So there's 12 months in a year. And if you made per car, each car makes $1,000 a month, it's $12,000, right? But it doesn't work that way because there's going to be months where you're going to make $1,500 one month and $500 the next month. So it's still $1,000 a month, but it's just different in how it is. So I'm struggling to, or at least I'm on a quest to really find my run rate and my steady state. So I'm not buying any more cars right now, intentionally. I'm running rich right now. When I say rich, there's too many people here for my business to afford. So I know I'm going to lose money for the next few months. That's totally fine. But what I'm trying to do is understand exactly what my 25 car fleet produces as I lead into the fall. And then as I start coming into the winter in January and February, really, what are these cars yielding in the slow months? Because here in Seattle, it's very different than other markets where some markets are much more flat. Like they have bumps and they're slightly seasonal, but Seattle, the summer is massive and the winter is really, really poor. Like who wants to come to the
Yeah, like
rain?
you and I talked about that. You and I looked at our numbers and we saw how different, how you have some incredible rates for, your good season. But then it sort of averages it out when you have such a low
Yeah.
period. Whereas
So
here in South Florida, we're kind of stable for the most part.
You have your peaks and valleys, but you're more flat. Like example,
Yeah.
Expedition in March does about $1,100 in March. It does almost $4,000 in July. So,
That's wild.
that's 4x, right? A Fiat is doing $1,300 in July, and it does like $600 in March or February, right? And by the way, I look at an
Let me just warn everybody, and let me just warn everybody, we're going to be throwing out a lot of numbers. As you can tell, like I said, we love numbers, we love data. We're constantly doing this every time we speak. So just get ready. And I know people a lot of times are super excited to hear, like, yeah, but what are the numbers? Because, and of course, it's very different. Like I said, Turo is so unique in that, it depends. Do you have one employee? Do you have three employees? Are you doing it yourself? Did you finance the cars? Do you have a good interest rate? Did you pay for your cars cash? Did you have 15 cars laying around? Everything is so different. So when people sometimes don't want to throw out specific numbers, it's more because of that. Because there is no way. But of course we could at least share what our numbers are, and we will definitely be throwing out a lot of those out there because we love to talk about those. And before we I just want to bring up these awesome super chats. So the Side Hustlers Society, this is my buddy Elijah who has an awesome channel. So make sure to check it out when anyone gets a chance. So thank you so much for the super chat. And I will bring up my other awesome buddy, my love letter to books. She also has an awesome channel that's getting going now. If anyone out there loves books, definitely check her out. Thank you so much for the super chat. You guys are so sweet. And the Side Hustle Society, he actually has a few channels, so all about finance, side hustles. So just wanted to bring those up, and I felt they were worthy of interrupting us. Thank you so much, guys, for the super chats.
Nice.
So yeah, you're gonna hear a lot of numbers.
Yeah, and like Yuly's saying with the numbers, like they're relevant to me, but they could be completely different. Like I would say in Florida, Yuly, out of your Suburban, you're not getting 4K any month, but you're more consistently getting 1,500 to 2K a month on your Suburban, for example. And I have months that I'm going to maybe hit 1,000 on my Expedition, whereas, so we might earn the same exact amount for the entire year in that car. It's going to happen
Right.
different.
It kind of yeah, it averages out. I mean,
Um,
I had a maybe a 2,000 month when it's been the 30-35 day trips. But yeah, on average, that's pretty much. I mean, you have some rates that are like $200 for a minivan, which I thought was
yeah,
ridiculous. Um,
$225 for a 2021 Voyager. Hello, I don't
that's
know.
crazy.
Yeah, for a
That's
month.
insane. Like,
I took it for a month. But I'm also offering a discount on that, right? So they're getting $40 off of that day. So they're at like 185, right? So um, it's not all that great, but still 185 for a minivan for a month. I'll take it every month. 185 a day. Um, so
do you want to bring some of these comments as we go along? Do you want to leave
oh,
them?
let's look. Where do I find my
Maybe we.
vehicles to rent? I like that one. So I have this concept of buying really slow, even though I bought 25 of them. Well, I bought 23 of them because I started with two. So 23 of them over the course of 1 year now. We even say 28 because I got rid of three. So I like to go to dealers. I like to find a couple of car dealers that I can actually have conversations with and they'll let me skip the line. Like I don't have to wait there for 2 hours to do paperwork. Um, so I like to get in and out really fast. I like to be able to call the dealer, tell them to have all my paperwork ready, and I just go in and sign and pick up the car. I'll tell you, I like name brand dealers, like a Toyota dealer, a Kia dealer, a Chevy dealer, and the ones that present themselves really nice that I could buy really good, clean cars. Depreciation's important, but like people constantly tell you that the depreciation is the most important thing. Like, what? Make sure you're buying the car right. Make sure you're buying the car right. I don't agree completely. Buying the car right is important. Like getting a great buy on a car, absolutely important. Like no question. But like if you're talking about $2,000 difference on a car, that's 14 or 12 or $13,000, right? Like if there's a $13,000 car, if you can get it for 11 or 13, if the $13,000 car that you may be able to find for 11 somewhere else, that's a great buy. The $13,000 one is super clean, like ultra clean. It smells good. Like if the car smells dingy and old, it's no good. Like it's gonna get people are gonna get in that car and it's gonna feel dirty to them. It's gonna smell dirty to them. They're not gonna have a good experience in the car. They're not going to give you a great review at the end of the car at the end of it, and then the car is not going to continue to stay on the top of the list at Turo. But I like buying from dealers because they have more selection of better quality inventory, like real car dealers, like a Toyota dealer. Because if they take a trade in on a piece of garbage, they're just going to ship it out to auction. They don't care. They're not going to risk putting something that's not great on their floor. And when I say paying $2,000 more for a car, you'll make that up in 3 or 4 months. You know, especially if you can get a car that has 30,000 miles versus a car that has 65,000 miles, like a Chevy Spark, for example. That does great for me. I have a Chevy Spark, a 2020 Chevy Spark that I got for $11,000 with like 58,000 miles on it. They had a comparable Chevy Spark for maybe $9,500 that had 75,000 miles on it. I mean, that's a year of usage for the difference there. And my Spark's going to do almost $10,000 for the year. So like, why would I want to forfeit a year of service on that Spark? So anyway, I like buying my cars at dealers when I can. I'm going to get into auctions next year a little bit, but I'm going to keep it very selective.
If you want to, my so the cars that I purchased except for my own car that I put on there. I've purchased them from Hertz, the Hertz car sales. So when I did my research, tons and tons of research before buying every car, they had the lowest prices anywhere. Um, you can argue, well, they're probably beat up and from being rented, and but you know what? They've also probably had the most maintenance done to them than as opposed to other cars that maybe people haven't taken care of their own car as they should have been. So it's kind of like, and I have not had no issues so far. Knock on wood, that Suburban has been amazing, and it was about $4 or $5,000 under any other Suburban being sold at that moment when I purchased it. So, and they have which made me feel a little bit better. I mean, it's kind of silly because cars, if it's going to break, it could break down a week later, but they do have the ability for you to rent the car for 3 days. test it out, and if you want to keep it, then they waive that rental fee. So that's what I did. We basically bought the Suburban, took it out. We went on a trip, big family trip, and I said, okay, it got us there and back, 5 hour trip, 10 hour total. So I felt better and went ahead and purchased that just to put it on. So definitely hurts. I know Enterprise and other ones do it, but every time I've tried looking at, they just didn't have the selection that Hertz had. And now you can actually go to, in some locations where they don't actually have dealerships, you can actually, which that's what I just did with 3 cars that I purchased. You just go to the rental place, you rent, you reserve the car online. So you see what's coming up for, to be able to purchase online. You reserve it, you just go pick it up at the car rental place, you take it, and if you want to keep it, you don't have to return it. You just keep it and you just do everything via, like, remotely. So it's pretty neat. They send you the tag, you send back theirs. So definitely check that out as an option.
Mm.
So real quick, I'm going to bring these two up real quick, and then we can move on with, and then any other questions, unless they're super relevant to what we'll bring up at the end. Um, Let's bring up Jordan Sims says, "Hello everyone, excited to learn from the Engineer Life community. Thanks so much. I actually spoke to Jordan, had an awesome conversation, I believe 2 days ago now. So yeah, super excited to keep communicating. So thank you so much for being here today." And Moni Maria, this is actually a very, very, very is like family. So super exciting that they're actually um looking to get this week. We're talking about starting to work with them with my best friend, who's her husband, and with her to co-host some cars. So she says she's starting with one Traverse, but their concern is they would need at least to have it pay for itself. And I'm always like weary with co-hosting. I know there's all these people that are always say, "Oh my gosh," and I'm always like, "How are you making at the end of the day, like when you really, really, really calculate everything?" But apparently it does work out, and again, maybe because right now we're in the September, October, which is like the lowest, usually for us. Um, October picks up a little bit, again, but I'm always like, I guess because 'cause I've not started co-hosting yet, I'm kind of very, I'm tempted to just say, yes, you're going to pay the car. Now what comes after that, what's left as profit, I can't say. I don't think most could say, unless you already are one of these hosts that have, like, 20 co-hosted cars. How many cars do you have now that are, well, now you're back to 0, right? That you're co-hosting?
Me?
Yeah,
I have 5 that I'm
the
co-hosting. So
5 that are co-hosted.
of my 25, I own 20 of them, and I used to own 23 and 28 total, but in the 25, yeah. And I say that only because I had 28 just a couple weeks ago, and I shed 3 cars really quick.
And what so I'm guessing you're doing the split, the revenue split, and then the owners are covering, their car payments, their expenses, car expenses, so car maintenance, car repairs, anything like that. And then of course you're handling everything else. You're handling, the car washes, the delivery, that's part of your overhead. What are these on average like? What are they profiting?
So I'll tell you the 5 cars that I have right now, and one of them just added in, so I can't really truly like. So I have a Model Y, a 2023 Model Y. I added that in May, at the end of May, so it didn't get any rentals in May, but in June it did $2,000. In July it did $2,000. In August it did $1,900. So you could take that and just say I earned about $600 each month on those cars, clear, right? My 30%, and
For
then
you?
right, and then the $1,400 from the host minus 100 for insurance. We'll just say 100. Actually, we'll say 105 because it's bouncy, and well, on the Tesla it's move tracks because you can't track it with the bouncy, but we track the car with move tracks, and then we have the insurance of $95 per tint. We use tint, and I insure the Tesla on my account. Um, There's telematics for the car, so we use standard fleet to manage our Tesla. So there's another $10. So it's like, let's just say the Tesla has $150 to $200 of total expenses out of it. So $1,200 that person's clearing. Their payment's under $1,000. I know that. Then we put a Model S Plaid on at the end of July. In August, it did just under 2,000. So, and it's the first month on there. So usually the first month takes a little bit of time to ramp because you get some future bookings and they're usually into the next month even. So first month it did just under 2K, really good. It's got a yoke, so it's an experiential drive, and it's a Plaid car. It's the fastest car on the planet. So I said earlier to Moni Maria about the Porsche, or someone asked me if, anyway, I'm worried about who's going to drive that Model S. So it's so fast, so dangerous, but we're gonna play the odds here.
It really is.
Gets killed. And I have like a Honda Odyssey, which did $2,000 its first month on there, and I just started co-hosting. So it's just these cars entered in July and August, most of them, but the Odyssey did $2,000 in August. And then I have two.
And are these the same co-hosts or they're different? So do they have multiple cars being co-hosted with you, or is it?
So my landlord, who also owns a body shop, I'm connected to a body shop. The house that I rent in South Seattle is right next to a body shop that he owns, the body shop and the house. So he's completely aware of everything that I'm doing on this piece of property. And he's a Tesla fanatic. He's got a Cybertruck. He's got like 4 Teslas. So he took the 2 Teslas that he wasn't using, the Model S and the Model Y, and put them on Turo. I met him through an accident that I had with the car. So he did my body work, and we've been talking since. So started a relationship with him. And the other person is someone that I know through Amazon, who I didn't work directly with him, but we know each other. He doesn't work at Amazon anymore. I don't either. And he's looking for personal investments. So he's literally buying cars just to put on Turo. And when you think about co-hosting, the person who owns the car, the investor, the owner of the car, can create a tax or a tax deferred revenue stream from this, right? So if you have a car or a vehicle that you use 100% for business, you could depreciate or write off 20% of its initial value every year. So for 5 years, you continuously write off 20% of the value of the car. So at the end of the day, like for example, a Honda Odyssey costs $30,000. You're writing off $6,000 each year for 5 years. Of the $6,000 now,
it's especially great for people with W2 income that are already paying in taxes. You basically get most of all that back.
It's good for anyone, someone who's not on W2 and self-employed that needs another write-off. This is another way to get some taxable income. I mean, non-taxable income.
It's great for high earners to be able to reduce huge tax liabilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's and then you also make money on the car, right? So the car, that Honda Odyssey, for example, will pay itself off in probably about 2 years. And then it's a Honda. It had low mileage on it. So I intend to work that car for 4 to 5 years. And if you look at other investments that against the market that are making 10 to 15% a year, you're going to win on the car. The car is going to make you more. So, and then he has an asset at the end that he could sell, and a Honda Odyssey at the end will be worth, $12,000, $13,000. You get a good portion of your money back once it's got 130,000 miles on it and it's been exhausted for a few years. So if you're looking at it as a Turo host and what you could earn for income, it's not great. You're co-hosting your car on Turo and not being the actual one doing it. You're not going to make a living on it. But if you're looking at taking your money and putting it in the market, if you're looking at taking your money and putting it in real estate, these are all ways you can invest money. This is another way. It's diversifying your portfolio.
And it's a lot easier to buy cars than to buy apartments, for example. Yeah. Not everybody has funds to be able to buy 5 apartments, especially since after the first or second year, it's an investment property. Your down payment is going to be a lot more.
So the difference is if I'm going to buy an apartment or I'm going to buy a piece of real estate, if I simply break even on that, the real estate is appreciating and I have the asset at the same time. Whereas these cars are depreciating. So the ROI is better on these cars,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
asset itself is actually a liability. It's depreciating as we talk. Right. So
Yeah, but in terms of like cash flow, if most people that I think get into Turo don't have the cash to be able to go and put 30, 40, $50,000 on 5 properties, for example, as
no.
opposed to they can get 5 cars that could
Yes.
potentially bring in somewhere near the so that's yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of it's basically what again, it goes back to what each person's unique,
Yeah.
circumstances are, and what it is they're looking for at at the moment.
Exactly. Uh,
Do you want I think we could probably hold off on these. We have like 3 more questions. We'll hold off on these until the end so we can get through so we
yeah.
can get through the items we wanted to go over today, and then if we have time, we'll make sure to go through those.
I see some good
So
questions though, so we'll make sure we answer them. Yeah.
Mhm. So let's talk about so currently we talked about what your future goals are. What are your current and then we'll get into just really some top tips and strategies. But currently, what are in order to accomplish those goals? I'm sure that there's some things that need to be ironed out. But even just right now, what are some of the biggest struggles you're facing right now, or things that you're actively trying to improve in the business because you need to get that done to be able to
Yeah.
grow or accomplish whatever your goals are.
My goal, my biggest struggle right now is to like remove myself from the business. Truly remove myself from the day to day. Like I've got a few other friends who are hosts that have the same amount of cars as me, maybe a few more cars than me. Um, and I'm impressed that they don't do anything. And that's not true. They don't work on their fleet every day. Like they don't deliver cars. They don't um, they don't clean cars. I clean cars not every day. Like today I didn't clean any cars. I didn't deliver any cars either. But and it was a good day for me. Like I was at my desk all day. Like it was a day that I was able to catch up on things. I spoke to a few people on the phone. And now I'm here doing this. But many days I'm out there doing deliveries, I'm cleaning cars, I'm, doing whatever you do in the day to day, because one, I love doing it, and two, I can't let go sometimes. So, like today
So
I have,
the friends you say that are able to, have, do they have multiple employees, or have they been able to find an employee that fits in and is able to handle certain things, maybe has a little bit more experience? Like what is their situation that they're able to
yeah,
separate more?
they have, so I have one person who could do everything. And then I have two other part time people, one who's strictly nights and weekends. She has a full time job during the week. She happens to also work at a body shop, so it's a great contact to have. And so she's not available to help me during the day when I'm mainly there. And then the other person, he's truly part timer and he's not super capable of doing everything at the moment. So I have to get him up to speed to really be able to like deliver cars on time, deliver them accurately, um, convey the information to us on pickup and things like that, and properly take photos. So we're working on getting him up to speed. He's been with me for a few weeks now. So, and he's part time. He's not like completely full time. He's a mobile mechanic. By the way, part time is I give him 17 to 20 hours a week. And he's doing oil changes and brakes for me every week. So today he did 4 oil changes, which was great. Like my cars didn't have to move. He did them right in place where all of them were parked. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully, we can get this app going and it'll eliminate a lot of that, because it will eliminate anything that can create user error, or, where the user has to stop and think, okay, what do I need to do now? Oh, well, I thought I should do this and not this. And that's where you need to step in and say, oh my gosh, no, this one needed to, they don't have maybe that experience yet. And so you had to step in and say, no, 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 this one needed to get done first because of, XYZ. And so maybe we can, start incorporating through systems and technology, which that's what it's for, some ways to eliminate some of those, headaches that we currently have.
Why don't you
Um,
click on Jordan's second question because it's relevant to what we're talking about right now. So it's see it on the screen. Yeah. So I hired my first, well, Celia was my first person. She was hired before we even started, right? So she was there before. Um, that was
Yeah,
Siri.
and if you weren't here right in the beginning when he explains,
Yeah,
just go back and listen to the beginning of the replay.
yeah, Jordan. I don't know if you heard it from the beginning, but I had an employee that was working for me prior, um, and she was able to help me start this business. So I had someone working for me right away. So for the first year, pretty much, or almost the first year, I had someone with me all the time. Which another thing I didn't mention, and I will say, it's very important. A top thing that I would say is important to focus on. So this is a tip: find someone in your area. If you want to do this, find someone who has a lot of the same goals and interests as you that's doing Turo. Go on to one of the community Turo groups. Like if you look on Facebook, there's a lot of local Turo groups. Like there's a Turo Seattle host group. Look, troll the group, ask questions in there, and then start like messaging people individually and like kind of find them and get to know them. So, and I found this host who has that piece of property 2 miles from the airport that I rent. And he has a fleet of 20 cars also. And we work together all the time. So we deliver cars to an airport all the time. So if I have a car, let's say I have 3 cars that are going into the airport, but no returns that morning, I can ask him, does he have any returns? And he may have 3 or 4 returns, and we could do them together where I could drive a car in and take one of his cars out. And he could drive one of my cars in and take one of his cars out. And we can kind of like make it much more efficient. Because if you have 3 cars going in, that's 3 trips to the airport, and you need to get back. You need 2 people. Whereas if you have a car sitting at the airport waiting for you, you can get out again with another car. So anyway, find someone that you could work with that you could share some costs with, like, right? So having a ride back means that there's a car sitting in the airport waiting for you. It might not be your car. And then like he has property that I rent from him. And like we're negotiating, and like I have this house that I rent, which has an office in it, and he works out of his house. And like he's thinking about taking the office space in my house for exchange for some of his property. So he can get out of his house and work at an office. So, just you never know what's valuable to other people. So that's definitely a tip that I would say is find other people that you can work with that are like-minded, and they may find something that you have valuable, and you could make money with someone without it costing anything. So
Yeah, and hopefully we can, one of the things we've been talking about is creating, obviously with this app that I've been working on, and we've been, working together, strategizing on, and part of what we were also thinking is, maybe building a community where, I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of times what they say is sometimes they're willing to pay for the community primarily before anything else. So I'm just, I'm thinking of creating, this community where if you do want to be a paid member, you have we have certain, we'll have weekly calls. You have, you'll be able to get things like the apps and the templates and things like that. But then I'm thinking we may also end up creating a free, uh, version of that to just bring on as many Turo hosts, because you say, well, there's some in Reddit and there's some in Facebook, and so maybe there could be a free area of this member where we just get as many hosts as possible and make it easy for hosts to collaborate, and communicate, and because one thing he did, he mentioned is great. In my case, it's exactly what I'm trying to figure out now. It's I have 5 cars, and I've had family members helping me handle the cars, and so I don't have enough work right now where I can hire a full-time person, because you can't you need somebody to be on call, because when the car needs to get done, it needs to get done ASAP, right? But you can't expect someone to be on call for you unless this person just happens to be, maybe somebody who's doing this for fun, who's retired, because otherwise somebody needs a full-time job for the most part, or maybe at least a part-time job where they need to have a certain amount of hours, um that are going to be for certain. Otherwise, and so I'm like in this middle ground right now where I'm trying to. So one of the things that, Brian and I had talked about, he had suggested is like, yeah, why don't you reach out to, another host who maybe has 10 cars or 15 cars or even maybe five and is in the same position. And together we can now afford, we have enough work to be able to afford to hire a person to be there full time. So not only will we have the work to provide for them to be able to do, but then we're also going to be able to ensure that they're going to have, a 40-hour work week. And so that's a win-win situation. Whereas separately, we have we don't have that, and we're trying to struggle to figure out, how to handle that. So
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely.
let me answer the other one, Jordan. Let me finish this one up. So I had someone working with me as kind of a partner, and then him and I didn't agree on everything, so we kind of separated earlier in the summer. And starting in June, I was kind of on my own. It was just Celia and I, just the two of us. So when do you hire someone? Well, and again, these are numbers that you're just putting out there, and my numbers don't necessarily match anyone else's numbers. But when I look at June, for example, at that point in June, I had a vacation planned in August to go to Alaska for almost 2 weeks. So I'm going to be off the grid. And it's just me and Celia. And June's coming. I'm in the middle of June, and my month is looking to be about $45,000 or $40,000 for the month of total income, which for me, that was great. And it's just me and
And that was
Celia.
just June,
Just
just for
June.
reference.
We did over 50K in July. But just June, we were in the mid 40s, and it's just me and Celia. And I realized that I had not taken a day off since January, like part of a day off maybe, but like really have not taken a day off. And my wife is like amazing because she tolerates this, but like we're going away now to Alaska, and like I need to be there. Right. So we went away in April too for a week, but I was on my phone constantly glued to it. I couldn't take any minute off the phone. So I rented a Turo car on my vacation. So anyway, in June, I realized I got to hire someone. So I just started calling everyone, the car dealers that I worked with. And it was like really the second car dealer that I knew that I had a good relationship with, just complaining. Like I was just complaining about how hard it is, how busy it is. And he's got some cars on Turo. And I said, do you have someone that you know that you trust that could work with me? And he said, I do. And he was very protective of him because he's been working with this person for 10 years. He's the mobile mechanic. So it took a while for us to align with everything, but like he works for me now, and I can give him as many hours as I want a week, but it's a slow onboarding process with him. That's a whole nother video. But that's when I realized I wanted to hire someone, is when I knew I could afford it. There was no question about that. And I needed to be able to take some time off, which, by the way, I'll speak a little bit further about hiring people. On top of the 3 employees, I'm onboarding on Monday a virtual assistant. So I'm using another service that has been created for Turo hosts out of the Philippines, where we will have a team of people, a pod of people servicing our account and running the app for us. So for a certain amount of time every day, I'm going to put the app down and someone's going to do my messaging for me, basically do my trip check-ins, check-outs, my toll bill reconciliation, my gas bills, like the Tesla accounts, do everything. And I'm starting them out at 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the month. So it's basically like $1,000 a month. And I'm going to test that out and see how that works. Because if that really works, my goal would be to move that up to 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the month. And that will give me this platform to grow, like truly, because I'm not buried in the app. How much do you pay per employee? So,
And this is Kayla. Hey, Kayla, thanks so much for joining. I don't know if you know Kayla. You may not remember, it was a while back, but you guys have actually been in groups together.
Yeah,
So
I remember Kayla. Hi, Kayla. Right, Brandon's group, yes? Yeah.
and say it again.
Brandon's group, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I specifically know because the way it's spelled. So I pay
And
$20
of
an
course, this
hour.
is, remember, take into account that, there's pay is different in different states.
Absolutely.
So, what's
Absolutely.
California, New York, is not the same as Georgia, Florida, so just I just want to remind
20 bucks
everyone
an
about
hour
that.
for one person. The other one, the nights and weekends, the woman who works nights and weekends, she gets paid $25 an hour, and she gets paid by the task if it's not hourly. So what that means is she's going to be working for 5 hours in a row on Saturday, and then she's going to work for 7 hours on Sunday. So she'll be paid $25 an hour for each one of those days. But when I do need a night task looks like this. A car is coming back to the airport and it's going back out again the same night or first thing in the morning, and we can't get to it in those hours without being insane. So she needs to turn a car around, and I'll pay $30 for that. So like she pulls it out of the airport, brings it in, vacuums it, cleans it, washes it, brings it back into the airport, gets turned around, or to whatever delivery location it is. So that's something that I pay by the task, because that may take her 2 hours to do. It may take her a half an hour to do, depending on how fast she wants to be. Um, so that I pay her a combination.
Yeah, and I think it when you have already people that you have on some sort of steady, income, whether it's part-time or, I feel like you could probably work something out where you say, "Hey," like you just said, for these rare occasions where let's say I'm out, I'm not available, or they rented the car and it needs to be turned around, in the middle of the night. Are you available? It's sort of like, the people that do Uber, and when Uber needs somebody to get to that place, they will up the price that they're willing to pay because you just need to get it done at that point. And yeah, you may end up losing a little bit on that trip, but as a overall, for your business, it needs to get done. And
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to be able to have that person there willing and available. And of course they're going to make, what they deserve to make in that instance. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And one other thing is my fleet is available 24 hours a day. So the way that looks is every single day at the end of the day, I block off that night. Right now, you could book a car for 4 a.m. on Friday night or Friday morning, whatever, or Saturday morning, whatever you want to do. But when it comes to right now, like right now, Celia is down at my place in my lot delivering cars. So right now it's not blocked. But when she messages me and tells me she's leaving, I will block all my cars for the night or my host hours. So I can't get an accidental booking that evening, and which would force someone to have to go down to the airport. I'll block it until the morning at 10 a.m. So we're kind of protected for the night. And then if someone wants to book the next night at 3 a.m., we could deliver the car in advance for that, and it'll be ready for them. So I'm available 24/7. We block the cars every night for that night. We have a 4 hour buffer between cars, and we have a 3 hour lead time for any trip. And so processes are like super important to me, and that's one of the things, Kayla, I learned from. I didn't learn it from Brandon, but it was reinforced at Brandon with Brandon. Like processes are like the backbone to the entire business. I micromanaged everything at the beginning, every little thing, and created a process for it. A car gets returned, there's no waiting. That car gets cleaned as soon as it's returned. The inside of the car is cleaned as soon as it's returned. There's never a hesitation. The outside of the car is cleaned as soon as it goes out, because it's going to rain in Seattle. So, if it's coming back on Monday and may go out on Tuesday, it doesn't have a rental book for a few days, you don't clean the outside of the car because it'll be dirty by that night. And if it's raining out, you still run it through the car wash. We have a wash pass at the local car washes, and we run them through in the rain or shine. They go through the car washes. So yeah.
and it's funny because hearing you talk about the buffers and and I have this buffer and this advance notice and all this, just it it just shows you how, like, yes, when originally when Turo started, they're just, hey, you can rent your car out, but it's obviously become like a business for a lot of people, and you know y- you can say, oh well, yeah, it's so easy. I just put my car on. What how hard could it be? But if you really want to start, you really want to do a good job, you really want it to be a business. There are so many little things that you just learn along the way as you go there are like, especially for you and I, that are like super detailed, super like we try to do a very good job with everything that we do. And so, customer service, we try to do the best possible job we can do. We think of everything, and there's just so many little things along the way. So that's why I think like these chats and the videos that are put out there are so great, because there's so many things that you don't think about. I mean, and of course, things like buffers. That's really important, especially now that they have the automatic bookings. You have like they're super important, because you don't want to wake up at 6 in the morning and have a guest that expected a car at 5 because they booked it at midnight and you were already sleeping, which happened to me way in the
which,
beginning.
which is why you want to
So
block your cars at night.
yeah, so what he suggested, that's the way he had. Yeah, so
If
definitely want to look into those.
you have a
Do
Tesla,
you want to? I'm
power
gonna
off.
bring up. So
If you have a
Naya
Tesla,
says, "Hello everyone, first time here. Great interview this far. Thank you so much." So do you want to now hold off on some of these and then try to let's see if we can get into some of these tips and strategies. Although I mean it's been ton of tips and strategies so far.
yeah.
Um
What's
but
next?
so talking about as we said, there's different levels of Turo. There's a Turo host who's thinking about getting started. There's a Turo host who has 1 car, 5 cars. There's Turo hosts who have 20, 50, 200. So, and it's a very different business and totally different topics and issues at every level. But what would you say are some of like the most important things that you'd recommend for people who are thinking of getting started with Turo? Maybe one, two, three things you want to just mention
Yeah, I mean,
for
I
those trying.
set up. Well, I said it before. Focus on the details. Seriously, like people say, don't sweat the small things. In this case, sweat all the small things, all the little details at the beginning. Create your plan in your head, and then put it on paper, like almost like a standard operating procedure. Not almost like, just like operating procedures of what you're going to do. Plan it out. Cleaning the car is like the process of like thinking about how you clean a car and writing it down. So if you hire someone, you could say, this is what we do. This is how we do it. There's no question about it. Right. And every little thing, like cars have to be clean. So the little things like that, very important. It's a big thing. Messaging. How do you want to show up to your guests? Right? Like think about your tenants first, right? Like what your business, how you want to project yourself, and then create messages to kind of convey that projection. Like, I want to be a friendly host that is always thinking ahead of the guest, thinking about things that they haven't thought of yet. And I want to continuously let them know in my messages. So what that looks like to me is like, if you're going to think about this as a business, start thinking about how you can automate it, make it very smooth and very like non-frictional, right? So put a car out there and listen to the questions that people ask you, write them down, pay attention to them. After people have asked you the same question 2 or 3 times, it should be in an automatic message. You should have a scheduled message coming out answering the questions that they're going to ask you before they did. And I knew it worked when, like, maybe 6 months ago, I got a review and it said, by the way, if you read my reviews, one of the things is communication is always, people always say communication was great, right? Clean car, communication was great. But one guest wrote, communication was amazing. Before I could even ask the question, the answer was in the message, which I thought was great. Like, how long is it going to take for me to get to the free parking lot outside of the airport? That's a simple question. We offer delivery at the free parking lot. It's a copy paste that can be answered in there, or put in the scheduled message. If you choose to pick the car up at the light rail, this is how you're going to do it. So they don't even have to ask, right? So scheduled messaging. If there's any hidden fees, there should never be hidden, ever. You should have it in your listing. You should have it in your messages. There's a $37 parking fee at our airport. It's $37. It's not cheap, right? It's in my listing. It's in my FAQs. It's in my guidelines. It's in my details page. It's in the first message. It's in the second message, and it's in the third message that they get. So they are very aware that there's going to be a parking fee. And then
I
they're
love the
offered
message,
the
of course.
ability to park at a free lot if they want to too. One message that really stuck out for me was 3 days before the trip is going to start, I send a message saying, "Hey, we're on track for everything." Because I kind of noticed that people would message me like 2 days before the trip. "Hey, is
Mhm.
everything okay? Are you gonna have my car for me? Are you gonna show up?" Like, it's Turo. Like the car, I could have,
Yeah, it's very scary for some people.
yeah, I could have forgotten, right? How many people have really forgotten about on Turo? I don't know, but anyway, I realized that people, many people, a couple of days before the trip, asking me, "Are you on track?" And I said, "You know
Especially if
what?
they're first-time Turo users.
Yeah," or ones who've been screwed. So, right, so
Mm.
I started putting a message in saying 3 days beforehand, "Hey, just want to let you know everything's on schedule, and you're going to be paying for parking unless you want to move over to the free lot. Now would be a good time to make a change to the location, and we can give you instructions on how to do that. And just bear in mind that we're going to ask you to verify your ID the day before the trip starts, and whatever else is in that message is in the message. And then the day before the trip starts, there's another message, again, telling them that there's a parking fee and letting them know it's time to verify their ID and all the stuff they'll need to know for the next day, and saying, don't worry about it. You will have instructions on how to get this car by the time you land. By the way, we only service the airport. So,
I mean, and that's, that not only is it great customer service, but it saves you time because if you can avoid 15 questions
ah,
from each guest, I mean,
yeah,
that's, time that you would have had to be there. And so it's you're offering it because you should be to, provide the best customer service that you can, but it's more beneficial even for you
yeah,
because it's saving you time at the end of the day.
yeah. So,
Um,
and then the other
so
thing is, good.
no, go ahead. So
And
stress the small things.
yeah, stress the small things. Think about your messages and think about how you want to show up. You know, never defend yourself ever, and always believe your guests first. Those are my two like most important tenets. Never defend yourself ever. Like as soon as you defend yourself, it's making an excuse. You put yourself in a bad corner all the time. Someone says that the car is dirty, right? And you're like, I cleaned that car right before I gave it to you. Yes, you just drove up a mountain. It's dirty or whatever. But like, you know, don't defend yourself. The car's dirty.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I feel
Thank
like
you
one
for Go ahead.
no, I just would say like when like now that you said that, that's another thing we had talked about recently where I feel like people that and this is really relevant to people trying to get into Turo. So I feel like people forget that they're getting into a business. Yes, maybe Turo 8 years ago was a peer-to-peer where people are borrowing your car and so you're like doing them a favor, especially and I know cuz I love cars and I'm not as attached to them anymore because I've been working from home for so long now that I'm not in my car. But before I would have never imagined letting someone in my car. But people forget that this is a business. So there's so many people that I talk to that are like, well, they have this like very defensive tone
Yeah,
where it's like
it's
if you went into a store or a bank or another business and as soon as you walked in, their initial reaction is like, "Well, listen, you better not like dirty my floors cuz I mean,
wipe
you're going to walk out, right?"
your shoes off before you come into my store.
Yeah, and it's like, "Okay, well, I was about to buy that $2,500 mattress, but now you pissed me off because you told me to wipe my feet because you're very important, and it's these things that people forget that it's like you're not doing them a favor. At least not anymore. Now it's more of a business. You need to remember that and know that your car is gonna be dirty, know that and so maybe not respond to them as if they're your buddy that dirtied your car.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. And think about this. Turo, like Yuly said, was a peer-to-peer like platform where people kind of shared their things. And back in the day, it was thought of that way. It's like, hey, thanks so much for letting us borrow your car.
Mm.
Some people still do that, but most of the time people don't. And consider where Turo was and where Turo is now. Back then, they were this like experiential thing that people would kind of share cars. It was very interesting to the person who was getting the car and how it would work, and it was appealing to the person who was renting the car out. But now Turo is taking customers from the big boys, Hertz, Enterprise, Avis. They're they are getting booked through Turo on Kayak. They're going to be booking cars next year through Uber. The Uber app is going to give you a direct link to Turo. The customer is going to be different. It's the rental car customer you're getting, not the person who's looking for an experience. They need a damn car and they want a sterile experience. They don't want this personal, how you doing, handshake, give me a hug, take care of my car thing. They're going to treat the car just like they did any other car from Hertz, Avis, all these things. They totally understand that they're renting someone's car most of the time. So they get that part, but they're still just looking for a car. It's not the experience anymore. And what I'll say is, if you're very, very, very detailed in your messages, and believe me, the messages aren't too long. People used to say sometimes the message is just too long. People don't read them. Put the details in the message. They'll read them, especially when you call out dollar signs in them. They read those. If you give them very good messages and you give them a very clean car, people tend to give you back information that you request and take care of your car because it's very clean. And the two together makes it a very careful experience, a carefully planned experience, and people kind of respect your stuff a little bit better. I read these things on Turo Talk on Facebook, and I don't have half of these nightmares. I mean, never have I seen a car trash the way I've seen them on Turo Talk. Like, people take care of my cars.
Yeah, I've seen some wild.
I will say I specifically cater to the airport traveler. So people are coming in and out, renting my car. They're not necessarily locals using my car as a replacement to their car that's in the shop or whatever. So I also
Yeah,
have,
it's also very different.
yeah, so I don't have any local, very, very few local. And I have a few locals and they rent over and over and over again. Like, they directly message me. I don't do anything private. I do everything on Turo. I give them a discount through Turo every time, and they keep coming back. They want the same car usually over and over again. It's fine.
So
But
would
yeah,
would you say that this is more for, like, which was the next question, which is more for, like, hosts that are already into it, they already have a car, they have a few cars. I mean, obviously, if they're trying to get into it, they obviously need to think about these things too, because you do
I,
start having to message right from the beginning, so,
well, if you start
um,
messages
so
on the
that
first car, why that then you're already set up for the second car. You don't have to. By the time you have four cars, it's going to be pretty hard to start implementing these new things on four cars versus
and
one.
plus, if you don't yeah, and if you don't start from the beginning with, doing a good job, your reviews are not gonna and it's just gonna
Yeah, and
start off a bad
I'm
way.
constantly reading my scheduled messages over and over again and seeing how they ask me questions based on those scheduled messages, and then I alter the message. So almost every month I change a scheduled message slightly, because I get new questions popping up about my scheduled message. It's giving them information, but it's not clear. So how do I clarify? So
So, I think you pretty much so, basically, your suggestion is just focus on don't assume that the small things don't matter,
they
even from
matter.
the beginning. And again, you're gonna be able to scale because you start doing things right from the beginning.
Yeah,
Maybe the next time we can get a little bit more detailed into some, things like for the person who's trying to get into it, how to think about it, what kind of things to think about. So, should I get one car? Should I get one car and try it out for a few months? Where should I get this car? What kind of car should I get? I mean, there's so many parts, right? That somebody who's trying to get into it. How much is going to cost me? Am I going to have to be pulling money out of pocket for a few months? So all these little details that somebody who's trying to get into it. The insurance topic, that's a huge one for somebody who's starting to get into it because they may think they can use their car, and that's a whole so maybe the next one we can get a little bit more details. So if there's anybody here that or in the replays that is thinking about doing it and has some questions specifically on some of those things, just let us know and then we can cover it the next time. Um, but so for somebody who's already doing it, that's it's like we said, it's crazy because it used to be peer to peer. Now they're really, really, turning into a business for a lot of people. There's people with huge fleets, and it's totally different business at every different level. The struggles, the strategies are going to vary significantly. So for those that have already started, if you could just name 3 things that they should focus on besides, so from the beginning, you wanna focus on the message, on small things, the detailed. What are, like, 3 things that you think if you had to say or pick 3,
Yeah.
that
So,
somebody who's trying to scale?
and I won't even like I won't go deep into any of them because I know where time is. I could talk forever, right? Uh, Manage your money well. Like, you know, I would say figure out where you're going to get money and a strategy on how that's going to happen. If you keep looking, you'll find a way to get money. Figure out how you're going to manage your time, right? Like understand where you're going to commit time to. What are you going to do? And have a plan for it. Like literally plan. I'm going to commit time to writing messages first. So I know that when I implement them, they're ready to go. Like it's one of the things I'm not playing catch up on, right? And then how you're going to manage your vehicles, right? Like this is one of the things. This is the reason why I know Yuly is like managing all these things: the time, the money, the vehicles, right? And goes to this app that Yuly is working on and building, and we're collaborating on a bit. Is how do I track all this? How do I understand it all? I'm Kayla, Brandon, went into a deep dive on his QuickBooks and how he accounted for everything, and it really gave me a perspective on how it's what I wanted to do, and he really showed me how to do it. So I give him kudos for that. That was super helpful in how I could manage things. But I manage my P&L on each car individually. So managing my money and my fleet financials is important. Managing your time, I'm not an expert at that. It's what I'm becoming an expert on now because I'm working too much on my fleet and not enough time on leading my team. And then managing your vehicles, stay on top of your maintenance. If you know there's something wrong with the car or needs to be done with the car, you must do it right away, because if you don't do it right away, it's going to break. And then that will be much more expensive and much more costly, right? Costly is the word. Like it breaks down on a trip. It's getting towed back. You're canceling the next trip. You're sending it to the shop to get it fixed in an emergency. It's not cheaper that way. It's more expensive. So
And not only that, but Turo's getting really strict on maintenance issues. They
yeah,
started delisting cars that, had tons of maintenance
yes,
bad reviews about maintenance.
totally. By the way, if you see a car, this is hard to grasp if you're investing money that you don't have in it. But if you see a car that's performing poorly because of the car, get rid of the car. It's got to go. If it's the car that's the problem, you got to get rid of the car. If you're the problem, fix it. But if the car is the problem, it's got to go. If the car smells and you can't get rid of the smell, you got to find a way to get rid of that car, because it's not going to work. Turo's going to take it away from you. Basically, you'll have to figure out how to get unloaded some other way. And then I would say the fourth tip, which is very new to me, but it's managing people, right? So that's the most important things: is your time, your money, your cars, your inventory, we'll say, and then people is the next thing, right? So, that's obviously, if you're managing the first three, you're going to need the fourth one. Yeah.
And so we're probably gonna like just try to go a little faster because I know Brian has to go at some point very soon. And so we're probably just gonna kind of just breeze through some of these just to kind of give you some, top tips, bullet points, and then maybe in future live streams we can dive a little bit more into these. But so we got a ton of tips as to like what to do, but what not to do sometimes is just as valuable. What's one thing that comes to mind
I,
that
I
you
said it
people should
already.
absolutely avoid?
I said it already. Don't just never avoid an issue. If there's an issue you see, take care of it right away. This sounds crazy, but like the only thing that I let ride a little bit, like, oh, I'll wait until it comes back on the next trip, is an oil change. Like generally, like if it's between 3,000 and 4,000 miles is when I do oil changes on all of my domestic vehicles. 4,000 and 5,000 miles on most of my Japanese vehicles, unless they're over 75,000 miles. And if it's a European vehicle, it gets an oil change like every 5,000 miles, full synthetic. Like my Porsches, my Land Rovers, my Mercedes, they all. And by the way, the European vehicles, I don't do any of those in-house. I send those all out. But oil change, you can wait till the next trip. Like if you don't have time between trips to do an oil change, let it go one trip. You're probably fine. But like, if you see there's a coolant leak in the car and the coolant is low, like you better watch that coolant very, very closely. If you see the car is burning oil, you better keep an eye on it. If you see that the brakes are squeaking, get the brakes done immediately. Like if you know if you know there's still brake life in the car, but it's making a noise, you get those brakes done right away. If it's your car and you're driving it as your personal vehicle and you know the life of those brakes have more life in it, like wait. But this is a vehicle that someone else is driving and suddenly they hear the brakes squeaking. It's catastrophic to them. They get scared, they get nervous. People don't know cars. People don't want to know cars, So I've
And
gotten
people also don't wanna have to deal with that during a vacation. I mean, they plan
yeah,
for this vacation, I mean, just think about if you were on vacation, you don't wanna have to deal with, like, a broken down car, and one of the things, at least if you were renting from Hertz, you just call them, you get another car. I mean, now you could really do that with Turo, but, I mean, you just don't want that
don't
kind of
avoid it.
experience when
Yeah.
you're
Quick example. I've got a Prius that went out. It came back on Sunday morning and it was going out Sunday afternoon. And the guest that brought it back told me that the tire pressure light came on at the very beginning of his trip, but he had never had to put air in the tires. Ever. Like the tires were just fine. And, lo and behold, I get the car back. I knew this coming into it, but it's a Sunday. I can't get anything done really, right? So it turns out that the tire pressure light comes on, flashes for a minute and a half, and then stays solid, which means that it's the sensor in the wheel. It's not the tire pressure. So I called the next guest and let him know in advance, you're going to see a tire pressure light. It's going to be alarming to you. There's nothing wrong with the tire pressure. I've tested it myself. The prior guest tested it. It's a sensor. I have 4 sensors sitting there waiting. When the car comes back on Saturday, it's getting 4 new tires. It needs tires anyway, and 4 new sensors. So I'm not waiting. And unfortunately, a guest has to experience that light, but I may get a negative review for it. But like that's also part of the business. Negative reviews come with the positive ones.
And that's one of the things we've talked about, we've been geeking out about recently and is, when we talk about the app and we're trying to figure things out. And so, yes, the app is going to be able to tell you, hey, track when was the last maintenance, when was the last oil change you had, when did you change the battery? I mean, you ideally want to be able to track everything that's trackable and then take it a step further. This is the part where, we love to just take to those future, wish lists, which is, the app should be able to tell you, hey, your car is almost at the point where it needs an oil change. I see that there's an upcoming trip that's 20 days long. You have this little 2-day period here. We suggest that you that you block out the car for those 2 days and just get the oil change done there, because there's a possibility that during that next trip it's going to go over, in the, required miles. So those are the kind of things that, you shouldn't have to think about. And I can't even imagine with 25 cars thinking about, because even with 5, we're trying to figure out like, wait a minute, was it that car that we did the brakes on? I mean, and I keep everything, but it's not in an easily, in a way that you can easily see it, or that you're notified. Really, you should be notified. You shouldn't have to be thinking about
Should
any of
not.
these things.
Yeah. I mean, what I like to do is I like to sit there and look at my spreadsheet with all my cars and all my miles in it and see the miles on it. And I have another spreadsheet that tells me the last oil change mileage, and I kind of sort them and figure out which ones are next. But it's a lot of work to do it that way. So
Very time consuming.
telling me what's coming next, very important. Yeah.
So So I don't know if we've talked about, all these tips and things that you kind of learn along the way, but sometimes we've learned some tips and things to do or not to do just based on like some either funny, crazy, or like even scary experiences. Do you have one of those that you want to share? Because
Well,
sometimes that is how we realize, oh my gosh, I need to go change that setting, or I need to go, not do this.
so this caused a new scheduled message for me, but like, okay, I don't know if anyone has experience with Fords, but this is like just like a ridiculous story that happened. It's still happening right now as we're speaking. But on September 11th, I had a car that was returned to the airport. It was a Ford Expedition. It's my top renting car. It's my top earner. And Fords, modern Fords, anything from 2000 and let's say as far back as I can remember, they have a keypad on the door to open it. So I lock the key in the car, and they can use the keypad to open it. They get a code, and if you press 2 buttons on it, it locks the doors. So the instructions say press number 7 and 8, lock the doors, put the key in the glove compartment, lock the doors, and leave the car. And on September 11th, someone returns this Ford Expedition. I'm about to drive into the airport to go get the Expedition, and my Bouncy, my tracker, tells me that the Expedition has left the airport. And I know at this point that Expedition's in motion from a thief, not from anyone else, right? Not only is the Expedition leaving the airport, it's got a parking ticket left for me, so they can get right out of the airport. The key is in the car. It's an easy one, right? And with that, my Ford app is disconnected from the car too. I get an alert that the Ford app's disconnected. So I know that the thief got the car, turned it on in the airport, disconnected the Ford app, and then started driving. He thought that it wasn't being tracked because the Ford app was turned off. So I'm only a couple miles from the airport.
Which is why maybe, I just wanna say, maybe we should also add some of those air tags or
Don't put
Samsung,
those air tags in the car ever.
you have to just notify them. You have to put it in the description, last I checked.
Don't do that. Put a Bouncy in your car.
No, but besides that, because the bouncy just gets ripped right off. So besides that, we actually had that happen, and I think
Yeah.
that's why we got our Elantra back. But anyway, so go ahead.
I mean, look, 1,000 trips a year in, a car was stolen, and the guest did not lock the doors. That's number one. This car, there was no tampering. The guy was just pulling door handles and opened the door, found the key in the car, and went. Right. So I started driving like a maniac in a Tesla, flying. I intercepted him. I'm behind him, and I'm on the phone with 911. I'm shaking. I'm so nervous. It was an amazing thing. And finally, like he ducked away and turned around, and he was coming towards me, and I like basically spun around. It was like I felt like I was in a movie. And he knew I was behind him. He eventually lost me, kind of ditched the car, but I had it on the Bouncy. I hid behind another corner, waited for the police to come and surround the car. That was crazy for me. And this was on September 11th. Fast forward 1 week later, the car was stolen again from my location. This time, I think from someone different. They stole it completely differently. They used a computer and reprogrammed the key system in the car, and stole the car again. Within 24 hours, it was recovered. I got the car back, deprogrammed the key system. I'm not doing a great job describing it. Got the car, went out on another rental again last week. It was stolen again from the hotel.
Somebody really wants that car.
Yeah, this was on a Turo trip, and this was definitely from the guy who stole it last time because he still was logged into the Ford app on the car, and I never disconnected it. I was an idiot. So now Turo is on it because it was during a Turo trip. The first 2 thefts, there was 0 damage to the car. It was perfectly fine. I just had to get a new key. The third theft now, the car has been missing for almost a week. I told the Turo person today in Trust and Safety, I pray that this car is not found. I don't want it anymore. Please total it. So that's 3 times a charm on this car. It was stolen. And then another quick funny one is I got a Pathfinder, really quickly put the listing together. It was a 2014 Pathfinder with like 50,000 miles. It was a perfectly beautiful Pathfinder, really nice. And I got the car, made the listing, but forgot to block it. And I was about to leave for the day because I usually block the cars for a few days and drive them. And drive them around for a few days. It was the day I got the car, literally. And as I'm leaving, I got a booking on the car for a week. It was the very first day it was on there. So I had to go deliver this car that I'd never even driven before. It was literally delivered to me from the dealer. I looked at it and bought it without driving it. And it drove from Seattle to South Carolina and back that week. So it had a total of 7,000 miles put on its first trip. And it came back making a weird noise. And one of the bearings was cracked. On one of the front bearings was cracked, and the other one was damaged. So the car could have broken down along the whole way. But I would have noticed that bearing issue if I had driven the car. But that was like a crazy quick one that happened. But yeah, that was one of my. And listen, those are the 2 worst things that's happened to me. So that's not that bad.
And And thankfully, the first one, the expedition, didn't get driven out of like jurisdiction. Because then I think I had a story. I think it was with Max one time where he talked about
Oh, it's in
that they
Mexico.
just can't do anything.
In Mexico, that's what happened. It's not
Well,
jurisdiction.
even within states, they're like, no, now you got to call that police. And so the car never stayed like in a place where they can keep. They had to keep calling different
Oh,
police stations.
yeah. I mean, look, for me, if this car left the state and kept going from one state to another, to another, to another, bless
Like
it.
just have
Let it
it.
go. Let it go. The further away it goes, the better. Just give me 31 days and then I'll get my money for the car. Um, go ahead.
So we wanted to get into some of the updates. How long do you have left, if
Uh,
anything?
I'm good. I have another 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Okay, so let's see how
I
much we can get through these. But we
Yeah.
wanted to get through um some of these Turo updates. As you some may know, Turo has been making a lot of changes lately, and maybe we can get into why Brian thinks that is or knows that is. And some of these have been pretty significant. It could really affect a host like business operations, their bottom lines. And so it's important that a lot of hosts know about these and truly understand them, and then understand what tweaks or changes they need to make as a response to those.
Mhm.
And sometimes a lot of hosts don't even know about these. I mean, I saw, I think it was a Reddit recently where someone said, I didn't realize this, and my 300 and something dollar a day car got booked for $100. And so they were, fighting. They wanted to honor the booking because that's not the guest's fault, but they're trying to fight with, with Turo. And so some of these things will, I don't know how much time we'll have to be able to get really into each one, but we wanted to mention things like, and maybe Brian, you can pick, which one, but things like the dynamic pricing, that's a huge one. The automatic acceptance of bookings and changes, which has already been in place for a little bit now. The new all-star host criteria, which I think you said just became maybe
Tomorrow,
or will become effective.
tomorrow, I think it comes into effect.
And then one that's that I believe is coming in the future, which is the Turo allowing commercial use, and there's two different aspects of that. So I don't know, given our what the time we have left today,
You
I don't know
want
which one of these you want to get into.
I'll breeze through them. Dynamic pricing, automatic changes, also our host criteria. Here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is Turo is getting ready to IPO. Plain and simple. Like this company, like I said it earlier, they're now competing with Hertz. They're competing with Avis. They're competing with the real rental car companies. It's not just a simple peer-to-peer, casual thing anymore. They're getting people that are renting these cars that just want to rent a car. They don't. It's not for the experience. On top of that, if they're going to look to the public for investment, they need to clean their act up. So one of the things is, and the Turo communities, they go crazy about this stuff. The Turo's trying to control this and control that. Yeah, they are, but like the result is you're going to have more business, right? So dynamic pricing and automatic changes. First of all, at 25 cars, and I can't imagine if you have 50, 75, 100 cars, automatic changes, brilliant, amazing. Like, first of all, if they're making a change on the day of the trip, within hours of the trip, you're going to have to confirm that. It's not automatic. But if they're making a change now for a location in a week from now that you're permitting already, let them do it, because I don't want to have this bottleneck by me having to do it. And if I miss it, it becomes a problem. So if you have one or two cars, I get the fact that you want to have control over that. But if you have many cars, it's actually something you don't want to have to deal with. The dynamic pricing part, if I'm going to offer my business to the public for an investment, and I tell the public, you want to invest in this business, but the entire price platform is controlled by the hosts. That doesn't sound appealing to me to invest. I don't have the business itself that I'm investing in doesn't control the pricing. No, dynamic pricing is what they need to do to kind of curtail this whole thing and kind of like put it all together as a package to sell it to the public. So I think the dynamic pricing is smart. I think that they know that we're their customers too. But Turo is focusing on the guest right now. They're going to do things
Yeah,
later
definitely.
in the world to help things for the host. but right now it's a guess game. It's a guest game, not a guest game. A guest game. They have to focus on
Yeah,
the
and
guest.
as long as it works,
Yeah,
I'm still kind of I'm checking it out. I obviously went on and did make some changes to some, which by the way, you could basically just go in and do some changes across the board. You can no longer do a minimum and a max cap, but you can go in and change, let's say, hey, I don't like these prices right here. I'm going to change all of these. I'm going to up it 5%. Let's say you can do a percentage, you can do an amount. And I did do that for a few because, for example, my Suburban has never not been rented. It usually gets 30-day trips, thankfully. And it's usually out. And so there is not ever a time when I'm going to need to lower that any more than it's ever been. Now, maybe there is an argument for some of the other cars to, increase some of the utilization. But the
but
Suburban, that's one that hasn't needed to have that. So, and then also, I mean, yeah, that's definitely going to some hosts are going to have to think about whether it's worth it for them or not, because if they got into these crazy car payments and now the pricing that is being put on there is, this super low price, they're not even going to be able to break even sometimes. So that
but
is probably going to
let me
kick
elaborate on what
some
you're
hosts
saying.
out.
Consider this. You're saying you never need to make it lower than the price it is, but what if all of the other Suburbans or vehicles of that similar, category have been lowered? Now your vehicle won't get rented. That's number one. Or if you have it at the price that you have it at, and you're not aware that all the other Suburbans and vehicles of that category have been increased in price, and you're losing money. So,
Well, right, which is why you need to definitely keep. That's why right now, especially because I don't quite 100% trust their technology yet. So I'm definitely monitoring the dynamic pricing, taking a look at it. I've had instances also, I talked about that recently with someone, um, where I'm getting people canceling more than ever before. I'd never had that before, where I think they've realized maybe they were already booked and now the pricing kicked in, and and they noticed, hey, I can get the same car over there for $20 cheaper, $10, and they're canceling and switching around. So, and that's something that I believe, is happening because of this. And so it's definitely gonna, we also don't know how it affected, you had the people who were super high. Now you have somebody, now you're competing with all these people that came down forcefully. And then you're competing with all these people that were super, super low, or they're competing now with all of us in the middle and the ones that came. So it's this crazy dynamic that I'm really, really interested in seeing how it kind of all plays out eventually.
so
Are we all now going to be on an even playing field? And so it's going to be dependent more on our reviews, our customer service, there's just a lot of
everything's going to matter.
variables that I feel.
And if you tie the dynamic pricing and the host criteria together, Turo is going to start removing the garbage from the platform. They're going to start forcefully removing the garbage, meaning like they're going to make it so you can't compete and you'll have to leave. So seriously, like the dynamic pricing part, your prices may get driven too low for you to actually stay on and keep your criteria, your new all-star host criteria up high enough. So this is how they're going to clean their platform up. And because if you look at this, well, first of all, 85% of all trips have to have 5 stars. Not all rated trips, all trips. So if someone doesn't review you, it counts against you.
Which I'm not happy about.
I'm
I
not
haven't really like studied, but at that part I don't think
that
is. I
that's
know you said you kind of.
yeah, I mean, I'm at 91% of all trips 5 stars, including the ones that aren't reviewed. So 90 and by the way, I'm at 1% 4-star reviews. So 8% of my trips don't get reviewed, which is, I think, a very good number. I think I'm competing in that spot right now. Like I'm doing, but I need to really watch it now. And I agree with, I've always said this, and I agree with Turo's concept is if you don't get a review, I would say 50% or more of the people who don't leave a review didn't have a 5-star experience. And they live by the theory in their minds that subliminally or subconsciously say, if I don't have anything good to say, I'm not going to say anything at all. So they don't review. So I ask for a review on every single trip, no matter what. I ask for a review every single time, no matter what.
I have an automated message that asks for a review.
Yeah. I do it 30 minutes after a trip is over. I send the message out saying, if you've had a 5-star experience, please it makes a great difference to me if you leave a review. If there was anything I could have done to improve this trip, please send me a message directly. So I'm guiding them to that 5-star message. I've had so many people say I've left 5 stars, but I just wanted to let you know that in the instructions when you sent me the car, you could have said this or that, or you could have parked the car a little closer to the terminal, or whatever, could have been anything. Or you could have let me know to bring a charging cable for Apple CarPlay, because the car I have at home has wireless CarPlay, and I just thought all CarPlay was wireless. So I didn't realize that older cars that have CarPlay needed a cable. So I changed all my details to say that. so cable required. So yeah, just
It's funny
stuff
because
like
I've
that.
actually been leaving little care packages for like primarily the Suburban, which usually gets really long trips. You get really nice revenue. So I've been leaving little care packages with with two of the same, chargers for iPhone, and I even put in like little mints, because little things that sometimes when people come from the airport, they don't have chargers, their phone's dying, they're about to get in the car,
Bad
they
breath,
have no idea where the charger is.
and they have bad breath,
Huh?
and they have
And
bad
they
breath.
have bad breath. And
But
it has a little thank you card, and a little thing of Kleenex, and a little thing of hand sanitizer, like hand wipes, like the little simple one-time thing. And I'm like, it costs like, pennies. And so I started doing that on, like, especially the Suburban, just because, I mean, these are really long trips. And so
yeah,
anyway,
I mean, every one of our
since
cars,
you said charger.
if it doesn't have a USB-C jack, we put a USB-C adapter in the car. A cigarette lighter adapter with USB-C. But otherwise, I don't leave them anything extra. Like, I don't leave them tissues or anything. I mean, it's not a bad idea. We don't do it. Here in
I don't
Seattle,
handwrite notes though. They're just little pre-printed thank you cards.
yeah. Um,
Um,
Go ahead.
no, no. So did you want, I don't know if you wanted to add something
I have
else
more to
on
add to
that.
anything, but no, right now I'm good. You asked about the commercial thing with Uber. I don't really have too much of a thought on that. I like the partnership that they're going to have with Uber, where you could book a Turo car right on your Uber app. So I don't know what that experience is going to be like. If it's going to push you into the Turo app, or you're able to, like, I don't know how that's going to work, but I know that you're going to be able to book with Turo through Uber. And then the Uber drivers using the Turo cars, the monthly mileage limits will tie into that whole thing. I will cross that bridge when I find an Uber driver in my car and see what they've done to it. But as of right now, I think I'm just gonna play it by ear. I'm gonna continue business as usual, ignore the fact that a potential Uber driver can use my car for Uber until something happens. In this case, I'll let something happen and see how bad it is and see what I want to do about it. But I've got 2 Priuses and I've got a Honda Insight. So those are, great Uber cars. I've got a couple of minivans, which could be good Uber cars too. But yeah, here in Seattle, by the way, if you don't have a hybrid, you can't get into the airport with an Uber. So you must have an electric or a hybrid vehicle to enter the Seattle Tacoma Airport and pick up someone. So
Oh,
if you
wow.
have the Sienna hybrid, the Highlander hybrids, the Priuses, Teslas, obviously, these cars are the ones that come into the airport. So if you don't have one of those, you can't even get into the airport and pick up Uber. It's not allowed.
That's crazy. So yeah, that touches up on the other thing that they've been doing a lot. And it's not, I mean, I don't think it's been them, it's been the airports having all these, strict rules and guidelines, and those, that's something else that tour hosts need to make sure that they look into if they are trying to get into it, just see what those guidelines and rules are. There's some airports actually that are not even allowing Turo in there at the moment. Um we recently had some changes in one of the nearby airports, not the other one. The other one's still good. So yeah, and they sent out a thing saying that they're getting very strict on it, and then we've if we don't follow these rules, we can actually. I mean, they go through a whole thing where like on the third time you're getting kicked off tour. I mean, they're getting super strict. So definitely for those that are like maybe looking into getting it, just make sure you look through what those rules are for the airports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as the Turo, the Uber thing, I think that is something that, like we were talking, you definitely want to eventually. look through it and see what kind of settings you have to play with to make sure that if you now that people are allowed to get your car and go do or eventually will be soon, get your car and go do Uber on it, that maybe you're restricting the mileage to whatever it needs to be so that maybe to, dissuade some people from doing that because you definitely don't want some of your cars being used for Uber because it is a lot more miles they're putting on unless you restrict them. It's a lot more wear and tear in terms of mechanical, your mechanical parts. So definitely a lot of stuff that maybe we can, hopefully get into a little bit more in future. Um,
Yeah. Last thing, I'll just quickly, I saw one question there. I'll just quickly answer it. I would say that financing cars, if you have to finance cars, I would not look for, if I was going to finance a car, I would want it to be a great car. So, for example, we just put 3 modern new Hyundai Elantras in our fleet, like 2021, 2022, and 2023. All of them are certified pre-owned. They were all in the $16,000 to $18,000 range, and they're certified. They have a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty on a certified pre-owned car. 5-year, 60,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty. Each one of them had under 10,000 miles when we bought them. Oh, one of them had like 12 or 13. If I'm going to finance something, I want something that's going to last for the entire loan. Don't try to take out some loan on a $10,000 Chevy Spark that you're kind of gambling with because the car dies and you owe money on it. That's not good. Economy cars, by the way, are great in every market. I think people want them. They're cheap. They're the alternative to Hertz. Remember, like, what are people looking at Hertz? Economy cars. My Elantras, the Honda Insight, the Priuses, these do really, really well. But don't finance a 10-year-old car. Finance something that's very new. That's you're going to get a decent interest rate on. That you could finance for 5 years at a low interest rate or a decent interest rate, and that's the only thing I would finance. Don't finance old cars that you are taking a risk on the car itself. They've got to be a great car if you're going to finance it. It's got to last.
it is the same, Kyle. I had starred this message from earlier, pretty much the same thing. Um, but I will add to that what you and I have talked about, which is the other thing you have to take into account, which may or may not have, you may not care about as much, but what the type of guests that you're going to be getting with different types of cars, what kind of experiences, how much time you're going to be spending. Um, for example, cheaper cars that are more probably going to be rented locally, that are going to have more turnaround as opposed to say, I'll just give you an idea, like we were just talking about that, like a large SUV or a minivan, which usually will get rented, by a bigger family, which is going to be here, on a longer trip. And so you're going to have less car washes, less having to turn the car around. So it's obviously going to be less, time consuming, less expense. You're going to have less issues, so the clientele is going to be different as well if the car is being rented at a higher rate, and that's, I mean, in any business. And so you just want to think about that stuff too, not just, oh, is the car, the price, the
I,
ROI.
I will just tell you, Kale, the Fiestas and Focuses notoriously have transmission issues. The CVT transmissions in those are not reliable. That's what I'll tell you on those cars. You're picking cars. I get that you're picking cars in a certain category, like economy cars, but we've had 2 Cruises, not me, but the other person that I kind of partnered with had 2 Chevy Cruises, and they've both been garbage. Like they've had so many problems. Maybe it was just bad luck, but the Cruise just happened to be, the car got rent both. He had a Focus too. They got rented all the time. The Focus died, like it had an engine issue, but they just notoriously have transmission issues. And the Cruise both Cruises catalytic converter issues, check engine lights going on for anything you could possibly imagine was happening, and they were maintenance nightmares. But like Yuly was saying, the bigger luxury vehicles, they get rented longer, so you're working on them less. So you have to kind of, what is ROI? What's the true ROI of the vehicle? Like, how much does it cost to keep that vehicle going all the time? Like, my Fiat gets rented every 2 days, so like sometimes 3 or 4 times a week I'm cleaning my Fiat. Now, it takes me 10 minutes to clean a Fiat, but I have to deliver it 10 times, 3 times or 4 times in a week. Whereas my Expedition gets rented once a week. So so you gotta, it takes the same amount of time to deliver an Expedition as it does a Fiat.
Right, and then, like, in my like I was saying, in my case, my Suburban is set to a 5-day minimum. So that just gives you an idea. It's on average, I actually looked at these numbers yesterday. On average, it's on 13-day trips, with
Let, let,
the highest being 56, a few 30s,
let me throw out some names of
definitely
cars
over 5.
I think are great. Kia Sorento, great car. Rent it all the time. You get a decent amount of money for it. It's fairly reliable if you get a more modern one. People like them. They're safe. They're comfortable. They have a third row of seats. The Traverse. Someone mentioned the Traverse earlier. I want one badly. They have 3 rows. They're roomy. I think the
I'll have
Traverse.
one this weekend.
There you go. Uh, um, Traverse. I'm a little wonky on Chevy. I don't like them much, but like my Spark does so well, maybe I'll take a couple of chances. But these mid-sized third row SUVs, they're good. They're good. They get rented on longer trips. They're always things that people want. If you're in a warm area, like if you're in Florida, you can get away with a lower cost Sorento that's front wheel drive only. Um, Here people want all-wheel drive, so it'll rent all year long. Like I have a front-wheel drive Sorento that rents all year long, and I make sure to actually tell people it's only front-wheel drive, because you can't go over a mountain pass in the winter with it. They won't let you. So, rather than someone not get hurt in my car, um, because people want to come into the mountains in the winter, that's for sure. Or they want to drive up to Whistler, and it's not safe. So yeah, think about Hyundai. What's the Santa Fe? Great car. The Traverse, like I said, the Equinox for a smaller SUV. We have
Like the Equinox.
we have a few Ford Escapes. Great car. All-wheel drive Ford Escapes. People love them. I've got a 2014 Ford Escape that did over 12 grand this year so far. The car cost me 11.
That's crazy.
So, yeah,
And of
consider
course,
uh,
go ahead.
consider the car that anyone would drive. So as soon as you think of a car like a Mustang, not the new Mustang Mach E, but like a standard two-door Mustang, you're giving up a whole portion of people who 2 doors is not good for them. Anyone who was looking at a Mustang as a 2-door car could easily just go into a 4-door car and rent it. But people who need 4-door cars can't rent 2-door cars. Like, there's people who just won't rent a 2-door car. So why would you want to alienate the market, right? Vans, there are only 4 vans on the road. That four companies that make vans right now, like Toyota, Honda, Chrysler, and there's one other I just can't. Oh, Kia, right? There's 4 vans on the road right now. They're scarce. So a van is just something that's very hard to come by. So you vans are good. And big SUVs, people always like big. Anyone can. If you have one person coming in by themselves, they could conceivably get in a big SUV and drive that, but they may not want to be in a little 2-door coupe. So don't think of Turo as an experiential thing anymore. Think about the masses of people and what will work for just anyone, and that's what wins on Turo.
Says good advice. Thank you. Says I'll keep that in mind. Thank you again for all the valuable information. Awesome. He says he's located in Washington, D.C.
We have a lot of
And
family.
that's
I go there every year.
and that's something that, that I was going to mention, whereas, like, yes, all that being said, at the end of the day, you also want to take into account your market. So keep in mind everything that, he just said. And then with all that in mind, go and see what these cars are going for in your area. Because, for example, there's cars that I actually thought personally look way better, same range, mid-size SUV or small SUV. And I think, oh wow, these look amazing. And they're renting for $20 a day less than others. Just I mean, why? I don't know. It's just the demand in my market. I don't know. And so definitely just make sure that, take all this that, all these this data he just gave, and then go do your research and make sure before you do get into one, that that they're all comparable in terms of like the rate you're going to be able to. I mean, that's a given. Just so you want to make sure what that rate is in your specific area. Also, you're obviously not going to get a convertible in Alaska. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess maybe for summer, and then bring it. You know what I mean. So it's very dependent on your market. I'm gonna bring up this one from Moni that was and only because it's a super quick one. Way back earlier, she said, "Can you be selective on who rents it?" And that's a very quick answer. No. You used to be able to decide who can book your car, and that's one of those things that they changed recently, where you can no longer all bookings are automatically accepted. And that was a huge thing that a lot of people complained about. And again, it goes back to they're trying to be a real company. And I get how that can annoy some people that originally got into it and, more of the peer to peer aspect of it. But if you think about it, you're planning for your vacation, for a trip, and you go and you want to rent a car. You don't want somebody to be there deciding on whether you get to rent that car or not and wait for their response. That's just an annoying experience. And so just, you know, from a business perspective is just not ideal. And then also what Brian said, it's just not, they cannot keep doing those certain things if they're trying to, compete with the big players and eventually go public, like
especially
he said.
especially when people who are not very attuned to how Turo works, they used to book a car, and then the host would have to accept the request, and people thought they booked the car, and the host never accepts the request, and they don't have a car, and they show up. But just to go one step further on that, you can be selective for an example of on the second rental. So if someone local, for example, may rent your car and they trash it, you give them a 3-star or below review and they can't re-rent your car. They won't even see your car, it won't show up anymore. So if you had a bad experience with the guest, you can block them from your car by doing that.
Yeah, and if there are instances where I did it recently, where if there's something that seems shady to you, obviously you can't base it on like a profile picture, or maybe well, now they actually removed. Now guests are not required to have profile pictures, where in the past I said, hey, I have a blank picture. That's kind of weird, but it was coupled with a bunch of weird questions like, oh, hey, how fast is the car, and can you go and do a video around it? And the last straw for me was when he said, can you rev it? And I said, okay. And I contacted Turo and I said, I'm not, I mean, clearly we see what they're going to use this sedan for. And so they are able to go in and say, and cancel the reservation for you in these extreme scenarios. Um, but for the most part, you can just pick and choose now who you want to be able to rent the car.
Um, According to the Turo car calculator, the last thing on the last question there. My experience is the Turo car calculator, the calculator is low for its annual number. You could probably, if you're doing it full time and your car is 100% available all the time, you can outdo what the Turo calculator says, because that takes into account an average in your area. So it counts for someone who has, let's say, a Chevy Cruze that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, versus a Chevy Cruze that's available on the weekends only. And it kind of averages out what it'll do for a year in that market. So it's factoring in the ones that are slightly available and the ones that are completely available. So most of my cars have beaten the calculator number. Now, the part of the thing is the ROI on the car and the profit and the expenses and everything. The calculator makes depreciation look really good. Your cars get used. My cars are putting on thousands of miles a month. I cannot believe how many miles. Every month and a half, I'm doing an oil change on a car sometimes, right? So, it's crazy how fast the mileage goes up on the cars. 200 miles a day it adds up when they're reaching those limits. So your cars depreciate really fast. The
I just
maintenance.
want to say that that's not always the case, like
No, it's
with
not.
all cars. So just keep that, yeah, just so they
My
don't think that that's like across the board.
Yeah, my Expedition I put on exactly 30,000 miles last year. My Tesla has done 11,000 miles this summer. So my one of my Teslas, my Model Y Performance, in 3 months did 11,000 miles. 4 months. So, but it's going to ease up. Like it's not going to get used as much in the winter. So you got to keep in mind the depreciation is going to change, and then your maintenance is going to be different for everyone. And how much the cost of everything is the calculator. Don't use that number take all that with a grain of salt. What you could do is look at all the cars in your area, like all the cars you like, and see which ones make the most. And then think about who's going to be renting those cars. Like in my area, Subaru WRX happens to be a great earning car. Like anyone's going to rent the WRX is going to really beat the living crap out of the car and do bad things in the car. So like I would never ever get a Subaru WRX. Just wouldn't happen. But I would get a Chrysler Voyager or a Pacifica because no one's looking to go fast in that car, and they're just hauling their family around. So they both cost the same amount of money, and they both make the same amount of money a year. What do you think will give you more of a headache? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and so if you want, we'll just do this last one here. So Money says, can you put it on and then take it off for the weekends? So the number one thing that comes to mind is there would be no point in doing that because you cannot be using it because it needs to be on a certain insurance, and that insurance cannot be used for personal reasons.
Well,
So
you could
there would
keep
be
it
no.
on
What would be
policy.
the reason?
You could keep it on your personal policy if you wanted to.
You can't. You can't unless you're on Farmers. Farmers is one where I found out 2 days ago from speaking to someone that they, in writing, were told that they can use the car for not just ride sharing, but also for car sharing. Every other carrier, Geico, Progressive, they specifically say you cannot use the car for car sharing. They have
Well,
ride sharing now, which
Liberty
means that
you can too. Liberty Mutual you can as well. Okay.
Liberty Mutual, but it's crazy expensive. Liberty Mutual, I was gonna end up paying what I would, uh, I think about the same as, if not more than, the car payment for the Suburban, is what
Uh,
they wanted. So
you have to be
I
careful
can't
with
see
your
a scenario where that would be.
yeah.
I've seen a guy get kicked off of Geico after 18 years. They said for suspicions of, they said ride sharing, but because Geico doesn't even allow ride sharing, which is Uber. Progressive allows ride sharing. The issue is, and there's a lot of people doing it. There's a lot of hosts that have their personal insurance, and it's not going to be an issue until, if and when, God forbid, they get into an accident, it's their fault. Their own insurance company is now liable to cover their car, any bodily injury, and the other person, and that's when they're going to investigate, and you're going to make sure you better bet that they're going to look at everything. And one of those things is finding out if you're on Turo. And if you are, they're going to send you a nice little letter that says, "Well, I'm sorry, your policy is actually void because we don't allow." Which, when I was speaking to this person on Farmers, that has Farmers recently, I said, "But do you have it in writing, or is this something that you're?" And does it specifically say car sharing? And he says, "Yes, yes, I actually got it, but I assume that Farmers is also up there with the same amount they're paying, that Liberty is charging."
But the only thing I would argue about is so when you're on Turo, your personal policy is not in effect. So if the person who gets into an accident with your car decides to call your insurance company, that's one thing. That creates a problem potentially. But the Turo insurance covers everything in the car, so your personal policy is not in play during a rental. And so if they canceled your policy while a rental is happening, it doesn't matter. The Turo insurance is still covering you. Your personal policy is out of play. If you're off a rental and you're using it on the weekend, Money Maria, then your policy is in effect. But if you got into an accident over the weekend and they found your car was listed on Turo, they may give you a problem, even though it wasn't during a Turo trip.
Right.
I have one
Which you
car.
would think.
Huh? Huh?
Say it again.
But I have one car in my fleet that's still on my personal policy. Um, and it's the one car in my fleet, one of two cars in my fleet actually that have a bank loan on it. And I don't want to take it off of my personal policy because US Bank is financing it and they require a $1,000 deductible on the policy. And Tint, which is who I use, all of them have a $2,500 deductible. So
Right.
I'm not
But
using,
I've never had issues. I've never had, and I even thought that now when you take it off and they notify, now at least in Florida, they're notifying these the lenders automatically when
yeah,
you come off of certain insurance. And so I always thought, oh no, this is going to be an issue. And thankfully, I've never had an issue with them, with any of them saying anything about that.
yeah. I mean,
And even with knowing that you're on a commercial policy now, because really the Tint and Lulas and are considered a commercial policy.
they are. And by the way, if anyone's using Tint, um, I found out today that you can change the name of the policy to match the title. It's your policy's under your personal name. It says on, or it's under your Turo account name, but you're allowed to change every individual car. You could change the policy name on the car. Not that it's irrelevant to anyone or not, but it's important. Um, uh, so, but on top of the insurance issue, if you're not offering your cars on the weekends, you're really not going to get business. The weekends are key. Um, by the way, if you wanted to use your car some weekends and block like a few weekends here and there, then you may do that, but really you're constraining your potential income.
Yeah, it's
And
kinda like getting into Turo and not offering, like, airport deliveries. Well, yeah, you can do it, but it's like, what would be the purpose of that? Unless you're, a host, like some that we know that are very, that most of their, guests are local guests anyway. But I would say you're really limiting the revenue in that sense, in that, instance.
all right, I
So
think
are you good to go?
I need to go.
You needed to go a long time ago. This is why our conversations usually end up being so long. So
Yeah,
hopefully we can keep doing this on a weekly basis and not just like chit chat amongst ourselves, but share all of this with everyone. And I know today, I mean, there was no notice. I mean, we just decided this yesterday, the day before. So I'm sure eventually as we do this weekly and we provide notice, more advanced notice, we're going to be able to get a lot more people involved and asking questions. I mean, not that we had time to answer all of them today anyway, but I'm sure that'll get better.
yeah,
But thank you so much for sharing your journey, your amazing insights, for even agreeing to be here. And I think most people that are watching this here, that watch this live, or that are going to be watching the replay, would agree that this was incredibly valuable. And again, as we do more of these, we're able to go more in depth and more into details about things. I know at one point we want to, maybe the next time we want to be able to like share screen and show like your QuickBooks, for example, and and some of the app, and really go into some of these things that we talk about all the time.
I'm ready. Yeah,
And so to everyone that's watching the live or the replays, thank you so much for hanging out. And if you've enjoyed this, you've gotten some value on the way out, please remember to hit the little like button. It really does help. And if you're going to be joining us again, make sure you subscribe. And if anyone, like I said, anyone's interested in joining this, we're kind of brainstorming through this now, trying to create this community. We'll have a free one where everybody can just come together. People can share. Right now there's kind of like they're spread out in different places. So hopefully we can create something like that soon, as well as some paid ones where we'll have more, we'll have calls. We'll be able to brainstorm together. You come with problems. We'll try to find, solutions. You'll be able to get, strategies and tips from people who have already experienced these things and save you tons of time. And so definitely if that's something you're interested, just maybe send me a comment, send me an email, or just kind of, show up for these. But that is something we're also, like he said, we're working on I'm really working hard to try to get this app to a point where I can now start sharing it and have some people start testing it. Um, and so, yeah, just be on the lookout for all of that. And so, yeah, thank you, and hope to see you again next week. Brian, I don't know if you want to give some final goodbyes.
No, thank you very much. This was great. I appreciate the opportunity, and this is it's been fun. Yeah, I enjoyed. I like all the questions. I like the interaction, and I guess you could add more questions to this, and maybe we can come back and answer a whole bunch.
Yeah, and anyone that we missed today, we'll bring on for the next one. So
Yeah.
again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, Brian.
Bye.